Thanks for joining us at this Stakeholders meeting for some proposed traffic calming on Belair Drive. I'm George Stefanis, I'm the city's Public Works Director. And I'd like to kick off this meeting by just explaining a little about what a Stakeholders meeting, what the purpose of a Stakeholders meeting is. The city uses Stakeholders meetings for both private development projects and city capital projects. And the purpose is it offers the developer an opportunity to explain his proposed development, or the city for a city project to explain the city's plan. That's one purpose. The other purpose is to collect input from interested residents. So Public Works has had a bunch of stakeholders meetings for various capital projects, trail projects, stormwater improvement projects, and we usually have a very, very small turnout. Sometimes, the city staff outnumbers the participants in the stakeholders. So I'm really happy to say that. I'm very interested in hearing comments and the input on our proposed project. This particular project is kind of a mix between a city capital project and a private development project. This project was born from the city's approval of the Conceptual Site Plan for the Melford development from Melford Village. And in that approval, the council included a condition that St. John's Properties implement traffic calming measures on Belair Drive as a part of that approval. And so St. John's Properties, because Public Works typically, always reviews any modifications to streets, city maintained streets, St. John's Properties approached Public Works and some time ago and started kicking around some ideas about what those traffic calming improvements would be. The council's condition didn't specify, it just said traffic calming in 4 locations. It didn't specify what or where or anything like that. So when St. John's approached Public Works, my staff kind of went back and forth with them a few times, trying to come up with something that both the developer and the city's Public Works staff thought was a reasonable approach to implementing some traffic calming measures on Belair. It's a unique street. You know, it has houses on it, so it's a residential street, but it's also kind of a major transportation route, you know, in this part of Bowie. So what I'm going to do is ask our developer, his technical expert is Mike Lenhart from Lenhart Traffic Consultants, to present the plan to you. He's kind of the technical expert too, so he'll be able to answer, technical questions that you might have about his plan. And then I have city staff, the planning director, myself, Mike Schramm in the back is one of our engineering superintendent that might jump in to answer questions that are more related to city issues. So Mike, I would like to turn it over to you now. As again, this is Mike, and he will kind of show you the plan and give you the technical side of the traffic calming. Once he's done, then we can open up for comments and questions and that sort of thing. Thanks.
Good evening. So there are 2 aspects of traffic calming. There's speeds and there's volumes. Speeds are largely dependent on, when you install traffic calming, dependent upon the geometrics, the type of calming that you install, and the spacing between the devices. And then there's volumes. That's the other component of traffic calming. Speeds and volumes are interrelated. The more you can control speeds, the more you can affect volumes, assuming that you have a split of non-local and local trips in the area. So we looked at the stretch of Belair Drive from Route 3 all the way up to 450. But as you get north of Kenhill, you have the school up in that area. You do have some school-associated speed radar traffic cameras that appear to control speed a little bit up in that area. There is nothing between, there's nothing between Route 3 and Kenhill. So we looked at focusing on that section. And the first device that we looked at installing is on, so Route 3 is over here, Belair Drive. Kenhill is just off to the left here. Between Kendall Lane and Beaverdale, and I know this is small, you all have an opportunity to come up and take a look if you like, but between Kendale and Beaverdale Lane, the first, we wanted to make sure that there were no driveways and no intersections in the way, that there's plenty of spacing to not affect people getting in and out of their houses or intersections. One there, one to the east of Birdseye, one just west of Kenway Lane near the church, right kind of in front of the church area there, and then one between Blackwell and Kenhill about halfway in that distance there. And that, trying to accommodate the existing driveways, intersections, and make sure we're not causing any conflicts there. That provides four in that area that we think gives kind of an even spacing of traffic calming devices that will help to slow speeds. When we initially looked at this, our determination was the speeds were probably in the 35 mile per hour range for the 85th percentile speeds. Some faster than that, some slower than that, but the posted speed limit is 25, and it's quite obvious that people are driving this section of roadway faster than 25 miles per hour. So our goal is to have a traffic calming program here that slows speeds, make it safe for drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists, and I'll show you a detail on the traffic calming, but we are leaving space for bicyclists to be able to get through these devices. So the goal is to slow speeds, make it safer, and at the same time, by slowing speeds, it makes it a less attractive route for non-local cut-through traffic that's going through the neighborhood that really, they don't begin in the neighborhood, they don't end in the neighborhood, they find it expedient for whatever reason to cut through. So if we can slow the speeds, make it more of a deterrent and a discouragement for them, it's not as attractive as a cut-through route. It should have a benefit in both of those ways, both speeds and volumes. We have two types of devices that we've proposed. One of the devices has a choker in the middle. Has a choker in the middle and has narrowing devices on each side. So as you approach it, the narrowing of the roadway gives the perception to the driver that they need to drive slower. And you know, the wider the roadway, the more inviting it is to go fast. The narrower the roadway, the perception is you need to slow down. And so we have narrowing devices, and then you have to move around the divider. Same thing in the other direction. The other, and we're proposing one of these. The other device does not have a median island. It just has narrowing islands on either side. 10-foot lanes. Today they're 12-foot lanes. Again, it creates a perception that you need to slow down. The obstruction next to the vehicle, again, makes you want to slow down. 4-foot wide opening on the side for bicyclists to get through. These will not slow emergency services. They will not deter emergency services or hinder response times. And they're not humps. You know, I know there's been some discussion about humps, so they're not that. Those are, you know, a lot more intrusive to the driver and disruptive. So that basically is what we're proposing.
How tall are those? Can a person drive over this wheel in the bicycle lane and the other wheel?
They would be 6 to 8 inch height.
So you could avoid that way. Some cars.
6 to 8 inches. We'll work on the design details with the Department of Public Works.
Other questions? Have you accounted for all of the cars that park along the road already? I mean, it's not just driveways. Those roads are lined with cars usually.
Well, these are, they're relatively short devices, so they wouldn't take up any.
The other is, how will plows get, with the previous one that you had, where you're kind of negotiating around different things, how will
Right.
plows get through?
Plows would be able to negotiate that. Yes.
I'm looking at this and it looks as though you're depicting a 4-lane with 2 lanes going in each direction. And Belair is, if I recall correctly, mostly 1 lane in each direction. So what do you got there?
This is 1 lane in each direction with a shoulder on either side. The props are not playing along well here. It's 1 lane each direction. There's a shoulder on the other side. The shoulder that's out there today is the same shoulder that will be there when these are done. We're just narrowing, we're actually making the shoulder a little bit bigger, narrowing the travel lanes at that location, and installing the calming devices. Yes, sir.
Have any traffic studies been conducted so far on that particular segment of Belair Drive? I live 2 very short blocks off Belair, near the church with the Red Cross, the Lutheran church. I've been here 55 years now. One thing I would say with certainty, I really don't think Belair Drive is a very heavily traveled street most of the time. What do you say to that?
I disagree.
What are we calming, in other words?
Well, it's 2 components, the speeds and volumes, and they're interrelated. So what we found when we looked at the stretch of roadway was definitely people were speeding sometimes 10 to 15 miles per hour faster than the posted speed limit. And so by controlling that and reducing that and calming that, we can also hope to have an effect of discouraging some cut-through traffic. People that don't live in the neighborhood will no longer think that this is an attractive option. I'm going to hear, and then I'm going to go over to that side.
I live right on the corner of Kenhill and Belair Drive. I try to leave my house every morning by 7:30, 7:45, and I can sit there for 20 to 30 minutes waiting for the cars speeding down Kenhill Drive and cars trying to come around Belair Drive to get up Kenhill. What are you going to do to alleviate that? That I can get in and out of my driveway. When I have people at my house, I play Mahjong every Thursday. I have to get out there and direct traffic so my friends can get out the driveway. What are you going to do about that?
I'm not sure exactly where your driveway is, but our calming devices, we do have one on Belair, just to the east of Kenhill, a few hundred feet.
Yeah, Belair.
The whole goal is to slow people down, and
Well, it sure doesn't.
That question, I see it. What is he doing about it? That's what she.
Yeah, that's why I came up front, you know, so, I mean, so this project is in response to the council's direction, actually, to St. John's about the Melford development, put 4 calming devices in. This isn't the only request Public Works has been involved with as with respect to Belair. You know, since school started, actually, I think I've had 4 different requests, you know, asking about, hey, you know, can we add a crosswalk here, this kind of thing. So your point's well taken. I mean, I'm sure it is challenging.
You're going to have a lot more traffic
Yeah.
coming down Belair Drive from 450, shooting up Kenhill Drive.
Right, now, you know, that traffic load, I mean, that's, you know, there's some disagreement how much traffic there. I agree, it's probably traffic load. If you have a driving on there, it probably is difficult to get out. I don't know that we have a solution, you know, to make that go away. You know, the traffic is what the traffic is. But this is one attempt, and not to say the last and only attempt, but this is one attempt to help with calming, you know, the traffic on that street. A lot of hands. We said we were going to go to the other side, so if you don't mind, we're going to go to the other side. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, you've tied this into the Melford development, so the expectation, I guess, is that once that shopping center is built, then there will be more traffic on Belair. What are the projections of that traffic?
Mike, can you talk to that?
Yeah, same question.
Of the increase in the traffic.
Yes, what are the projections of the increase in traffic?
If I recall correctly, it was about 8,500 trips per day. This is on Belair, just west of Route 3. And it's existing. And it was to go to around 10,000, give or take a little bit. I don't know the exact rate off the top of my head.
Second part of that, I mean, there's an expectation that people will be, what, taking Belair to Kenhill to get on Route 50 or something. Is that it, or what?
Well, the expectation would be that anybody headed for Route 50 would not use Belair or Kenhill.
I think the question is, what's the genesis of the increase from 85 to 10?
Oh, from 85 to 10. Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to narrow down the expectation here. I mean, you're obviously predicting a lot more traffic on Belair.
Well, growth in background traffic, there's, and the Melford project, there was some percentage of trips that was assigned to traffic to the roads there.
So that development, you know, assigns routes all over the place, probably far more routes on 3.
Yeah.
But, you know, some people may not be cutting through, they may actually be going up to 450 for whatever that purpose is. Or, you know, so it does come.
Their property, let me just add to that, their property showed that there was 8,454 trips per day. And with Melford added, it would go to 10,043. And what their property is based on is that they claim that they could apply enough traffic calming to reduce that by 20%. This is traffic volume, not speed. That's what the property is based on. Volume, because they're trying to overcome city code that they were concerned with. And they said that they could reduce that down to 7,833. And their proffer, based on that, was the city council was saying that we'll put traffic calming in, and we'll not only reduce the traffic, we'll make it less than it is today. That's what their proffer is based on. So if that is true, the question is, with these devices, what improvement are you going to gain from it? So first of all, what's the basis of that 20% claim? And then how effective are these going to be in respect to your property?
So these devices, I'd like to respond to that. So these devices are traffic calming devices. The council did not ask to do traffic diversion, which is a significantly more challenging effort. And I don't know how you can divert, you know, Melford traffic from Belair without causing some significant problems. So the traffic calming, you know, does it have a known impact on reducing the volume? No. The project, again, that we're working on is to implement 4 calming measures in that stretch. Are they the solution to reduce the traffic from 10 back down to 85 or lower? Probably not.
That's what the property is based on. That's what this council agreed to. That puts the basis of it.
So, yeah, okay, understood. But the council's, whatever the basis was, you know, that's passed. Right now, we're working on the council's agreement with St. John's is build the 4 measures, and that's what we're working on.
But the council was misled by the statement that they could reduce the traffic that much. So therefore, the council was using misinformation in accepting that profit.
That's not true.
Then tell me what the 20% is based on.
It's based on an ITE study done in 2009, based on different types of traffic calming.
2009, this is 17, let him talk.
Different types of traffic calming devices. It had a list of devices. Now, there were certain averages taken from that study for different types of devices. I think you're alluding to the difference between humps and narrowing, the average, what the average was. So at the time that was proffered, there wasn't a determination as to whether narrowing or humps would be the traffic devices. That's been done in concert with Public Works since the City Council approved it. Now, notwithstanding, if now we're at narrowers, if you're also alluding to that same study at a certain average percentage of a 10% reduction, that's what that study showed. However, that study also showed that it was an average. Narrowing also allowed up to 15 to 20% reduction in certain circumstances. So again, the 10% in that study for narrowing was an average. So I will say that, again, this has developed and evolved since the council's initial discussion of this matter and proffered before the conceptual site plan. We've now been through preliminary plan of subdivision. There's a condition saying that we have to provide 4 calming devices, and really that's why we're here.
I just need to counter your statement. You said 20%. I'm glad that you stated that it was an average. You got in front of the council back in February and said you will achieve that 20%. That's what your statement was. Now you're saying it's an average. There's a big difference between average. The average, it has a very high standard deviation. I'm sure you understand that. And if you go to your ITE study, it says, it gives you clear examples where you don't achieve that.
And there's other examples where you exceed it. So
you primarily don't achieve it.
It's an average.
You do not have alternate routes.
Okay.
There are no alternate routes to Belair Drive, so you're not going to be reducing traffic.
well, you're going to be
Misstated.
you're going to no, we didn't.
Yes, you did.
No,
We never said-
you can have your opinion, but that's not. We didn't misstate it. It was an average. The study supports 20% as a possibility for narrowing. It was 20% was clearly an average for humps in that study, and we're not doing humps. So, and we figured this is the more desirable improvement to make for calming.
I'll let everybody else talk.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we are here to jump through some necessary hoops in a development that you well know nobody in Bowie except the city council wants. So my question is, how are these things going to be? Are you going to be putting something up so that older drivers are not supposed to just know where this 6-inch bump is and they hit with their tire? What is going to be there that makes it visible to older drivers, that makes it safe for older drivers to jump through these hoops with you?
So, there will be, for the one, for example, that has the island in the middle, there will be object markers at the beginning of each island. Big black and yellow signs.
That will be how high?
Maybe about that high
Okay.
or more. You will definitely be able to see them as you're approaching. There'll be edge lines, white edge lines that will be painted to narrow the roadways and direct you away from the device. There'll be signs in the island in the middle, big keep right signs, big white on black signs, so that you'll see it right in front of you. It'll be marking the location of the island. And there may also be a yellow object marker on that same sign. So they'll be very obvious that they're there, you'll see them, you'll be able to slow and react.
That's one of our responsibilities is we in Public Works, one of the things we review the design for is to make sure it meets criteria. We use the criteria published by Federal Highways for those exact same changes.
Okay, follow-up question. When the snow plows have to go through and you're pushing stuff to the side, you're going to be narrowing the lane even further because you're not, don't tell me you're going to get out and shovel those things right down to wherever that little 6 to 8 inch concrete or whatever it is barrier is. So you're going to be pushing snow and narrowing the road even further. How safe is that going to be?
So, well, our plow drivers, they will try to get right to the curb.
They'll do their best,
Yeah,
but they're not going to
and it's
get right
marked,
to the
so
curb.
how safe it is, we're not doing anything that's not accepted practice for roadways. So what we're doing is accepted practice for roadways. I don't, does it increase safety in some manners because people slow down? Yes. Does it increase the opportunity for you to slam your tire into the curb? Well, yeah, it does. I mean, and that's how it slows people down because they get worried about slamming their tire into the curb. Yes, sir. Back here.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm very skeptical of these. I've seen them implemented in other neighborhoods here in the county, and they have not helped. This model that you have up on the paper right now in particular, cars just tended, unless there was oncoming traffic, they just continued at their speed, moved to the middle, and then continued right up. With the other one, they just slow down for that, and then they speed right back up. I don't think it's going to do anything to reduce the flow of traffic or even the speed. It may reduce it at that one point, but they're going to speed right back up.
Just cut down the speed.
And my other question is, when you put these in, and they're found to not be effective, is St. John's going to be on the hook to come up with another reason, or do these four just alleviate their obligation?
That meets their obligation. Doesn't mean my obligation now, so, Public Works stays
So
around.
if they put these in and they don't work, they can, no, we did what we had to do. They're not obligated to solve the problem, just put something in.
That's correct, but I don't want to belittle their effort here. They have worked with us to come up with something that the city staff thought was appropriate for Bell.
I can just say, I've seen them put in the Lake Arbor area, in the Capitol Heights area, and the East Campus Way area, and they have not.
Industry standards, they have done studies, and they do slow traffic. There's different types, they slow traffic.
Momentarily.
We're here to get your input, and I'm like taking notes, and we'll keep these notes. So I'm going to ask this gentleman right here.
Hi, a few things. I'll start with one. You mentioned 85th percentile is 35 miles an hour. For those in the room that are not familiar with the 85th percentile, can you please explain the 85th percentile? And I have additional follow-up.
There's a distribution of speeds when people drive down the roadway. You have some people that drive, you might have some people that drive 20, you might have some people that drive 50. But you have very few that are driving 20, you have very few, presumably, that are driving 50. And as you get closer into the middle, it's a bell curve. And so when you're at the bottom of the bell curve, that 20, and I'm throwing these numbers out there, I don't know if these are the numbers, but I'm using them as examples. The 20 might be the 15th percentile because 15% of the people or less are driving that. And as you go through the bell and you come out the other side, the 50, in this case 35, would be the 85th percentile speed, which 85% of the traffic is driving that speed or less, 15% are driving that speed or higher.
Right, I understand your explanation of it now. You said the 85th percentile speed is 35 miles an hour. And you made up numbers for the explanation. However, I would assume that you have your study with you for this meeting tonight to show the populace here how you got to that number 35 miles an hour. Because I can tell you the top 15% far exceeds 35. Because I've had cars doing 70, 80
Yeah,
miles.
it doesn't matter how fast they go. The 85th percentile.
Eventually hits someone's house. I get that.
Yeah, the 85% of the people are 35 and below.
But the speed
There could be someone going 100.
25.
That's correct.
How long is the survey? What was the sample size?
They're usually spot surveys. You don't.
And there's guidelines with 85th percentile of when, the time of day it has to be conducted, and then how many consecutive days they also have to be conducted in order to conduct a true 85th percentile survey.
Okay.
So I'm asking, is that survey available for the populace to view? Since they brought it up in the meeting that 35 miles an hour is 85th percentile speed. I'm challenging that. I don't think it's correct. I'd like to see the survey.
I don't have it with me.
But is it
Okay,
on the?
so I have additional questions.
It was in our memo. I don't. I mean,
Okay.
years ago.
It is probably
That's a concrete number that's provided in this meeting. I would like to see the survey. Additional questions. You made claims that the speed camera at Belair at the annex, because there's a speed camera there already, your survey is not good to that extension because you feel you mentioned here earlier that speed camera already reduces speeds. I think that's a fallacy. Numerous cars and buses are speed along the roadway, and just like the gentleman down here to the right mentioned, those traffic calming devices, those speed cameras only solve it instantaneously at that particular location. Just a few weeks ago, there was an accident on Friday evening. A car coming on Belair from the annex going towards Kenhill strikes a car turning left from Belair onto Trinity. I know it was there because when I got home a few hours later, the bumper's still on the sidewalk, glass all over the road. It sat there for the entire weekend. But speed limit's 25. You said that the chokes and narrows will slow speed, make speeding less attractive for people traveling through the area. Well, all the cars that line Belair Drive are natural, varying choke points throughout, to the effect that there's 4 houses along Belair Drive that police officers would have, with marked police cars or unmarked police cars parked in Belair Drive. Last I checked, the police car was a deterrent, but cars still continue to speed past Belair Drive. So deterrent or not, changing from 12 feet to 10 feet isn't going to change it. And then the caveat that it will not slow emergency response times is indicative upon the ability for cars to still navigate through those structures at various speeds, far exceeding the 25-mile-an-hour posted zone. I understand your responsibility is not to enforce the speed and everything else. Your purpose is to provide these 4 areas to reduce speed, and those 4 areas could be here, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. We met the requirement. However, it's not solving the issue. Bike lanes, you mentioned that bike lanes still have the possibility of traveling through. I ride bicycles, I tow my kids in a trailer. We meet all the requirements of Maryland traffic law. Bicycles are vehicles by definition. We have the right to the roadway. Speed limit's only 25 miles an hour. I have the right to the entire lane as long as they can maintain speed, which I can. I've been ran off the road numerous times. I understand that's not your problem. That's an issue for the police department. However, if I use the ability of the bike lane and or the shoulder when it's allowed, I'm able to do it, not required because of the speed I'm allowed for the entire length of the roadway, I now have to navigate these choke points myself as a cyclist while contending with the passing traffic who are also trying to navigate it. If I'm towing a trailer, am I going to be able to navigate that 4-foot wide barrier between the choke point and the sidewalk or the curb? Probably not. But I don't have any right or obligation to do so. I have the right to the lane or the bike lane. I think stop signs would be more advantageous at various locations throughout Belair Drive.
Yes. Exactly.
I think stop signs at Belair and Trinity, stop signs at Tulip Grove and Belair, Kenhill and Stony Brook, which would cause an issue, and I get that. Buckingham and Beaverdale.
Any intersection of a double yellow.
Stony Brook and Stony Brook.
And I know the issue between Kenhill and Stony Brook on Belair Drive, because that's a major thoroughfare from Kenhill to Stony Brook, and I wholeheartedly get that. I understand, and there's issues with crosswalks that are not properly painted, and someone had mentioned it earlier. I think stop signs on Belair Drive cost a heck of a lot more than these traffic calming devices aren't going to do anything. You put stop signs on any major thoroughfare with a double yellow along Belair Drive, it's going to cost the city a heck of a lot less money than this survey if it's done for free. And then have the police department out there enforcing the stop signs. Those stop signs are going to slow traffic down 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's going to do that.
And reduce the desirability of the coverage. Absolutely.
Thanks for your comments. Let's get some others. Oh, jump back over this time.
You've got 2 different devices here. You spoke earlier about efficiency numbers, effectiveness numbers. Can you tell me what the average is for each of those 2 devices for the effectiveness for reducing volume and for reducing speed? Do you have those numbers? You talked about it in the ITE and the general studies. Do you have those numbers?
The ITE studies gave averages for different types of devices based upon the studies that they did. I mean,
With an upper and a lower understanding.
Yeah.
Do you know what they are off the top of your head for those 2 devices?
I believe that the average was 10%.
10% reduction. And how does that compare to humps and what other devices were in that study that were options? I understand we've got these 2 as proposals, but what are the other options? Obviously, you know, stop signs, maybe there's some statistics in there as well on that. Do you have that information?
So stop signs are not going to be addressed because stop signs are not a traffic calming measure. Humps, I think you said, are actually a higher
The humps were like
success rate.
22%, I think was what the ITE.
So stop signs don't slow traffic.
Well,
Stop signs are not a traffic calming measure.
so
Traffic device.
they would slow traffic along the entire route, but as far as ITE, Institute for Transportation Engineers is the organization that publishes a lot of these data and studies. They have the traffic calming handbook that some of this information has come from that we're talking about. They don't deem traffic signs to be traffic or stop signs to be traffic calming devices. Although they can be used that way, it's not the way they're intended to be used, so they're not included in that data. It could be done. What you're saying.
They solve the
could-
traffic, and they reduce the desirability of the cut-through, and they're cheaper.
I'm not arguing
Looking
with
at
you.
them.
Yeah, just because we were charged with traffic calming.
You already used them behind the Bowie Town Center.
Sorry?
I remember when behind Bowie Town Center, that was a straightaway, and then you put four-way stops in there to slow people down. The city's already done that in another area, and it worked.
And it worked.
Absolutely.
So I'm not prepared to answer the, stop sign question. I certainly have it down as, hey, there's input from the community that believe stop signs would be a good solution for Bel Air. I'm not prepared because I know the city hasn't adopted warrants for when we can and cannot implement stop signs, but we'll definitely look into these comments.
Can we get back to the question though? Do we have the statistics on that you can give us? I understand if you don't have them here, but
Well, those are the numbers. I'm pretty certain that was the number, 10.
and then what about for humps and what about for other alternatives? What other alternatives are there in the IT?
There were a number of, in that particular report, there were 6 or 8 other options, ranging from closures to partial closures to diversion, diverting traffic through neighborhoods. Humps, they had 2 different types of humps in that study. I think a 14-foot and a 20-foot or something. I don't remember exactly, but there were a number of different. I don't remember what those percentages were.
And I guess my point is that we're looking at something that has purported 10% improvement, reduction in speed and volume, right? But I don't know how to compare that. I don't know what to compare it to. If there's something else sitting on the shelf that gets me 40% or 2%, all I know is I got a 10% solution. I don't know if there's a different solution out there.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of talk about 10%, 22%. We did not say there will be an exactly 22% reduction. I never said that. When you're twisting it, because we didn't say that. The studies show that there are averages. We said it can, not will, have up to this impact. Every place has got different situation, and I did not stand in front of anybody and say this is exactly what will happen, because this is not the type of thing that we can make that.
Can I get back to the question that I was addressing though?
Sure,
which is,
sorry.
What are these other options that are out there? Is there a 15% solution? Is there a 7% solution? Is there a 20% solution? I'm not seeing, what I'm seeing is 2 options, and they may in fact be the best ones, but I have no way of judging.
So when the St. John's the first approach us, speed humps was on the table. We didn't think Public Works didn't think speed humps was a good solution for Bel Air. Why? It may.
If the people who live there want them, then it's.
And that's why we're here. And that's exactly why we have posted stakeholder meetings. So we're not done. We're not done with this project. But we did not think speed humps was a good idea. We didn't think the community would be in favor of speed humps. We were maybe wrong.
Have you asked the community?
Yeah. That's what we're here today for.
Okay, well, we're here, so ask us, and we'll tell you right now. Please ask the question. What do we think about speed humps?
I think our process here is to collect input from different people.
So we're going to give you input, ask us about speed humps.
What do you want me to ask?
How many people in the room would like to have speed humps? How many are opposed?
Wait, I got a question.
There you go.
I got a question.
Yeah, exactly.
The purpose of this meeting is not to solicit input from the residents. The purpose of this meeting was to present their solution to something that's there and then get the residents' input on that solution. You haven't asked the residents what they think their solution would be.
That's part of my question now. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. We're here to present our concept. That's typically what we do. We come to a stakeholders meeting and we present a concept, and then we ask for input. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So if there's a suggestion for stop signs, we're taking that with us. If there's a suggestion for speed humps, we're taking that with it. I'll tell you, the show of hands was not overwhelming in favor of the speed humps. So there is going to be different opinions. Ma'am, with the yellow shirt?
Yes. I want to go back on following up on defer. why were not speed humps disregarded by Public Works, and why are we getting something that is a choke point that can cause more accidents than a speed hump? I have lived around the world. I know what choke points do. I've had to go through many of them. I have seen more accidents. I have driven in the District of Columbia. I have driven in the city of Laurel that has speed humps. They do not cause accidents. So my question is, why did Public Works disregard speed humps? I'm not saying bumps, I'm saying speed humps.
It was our opinion that we didn't disregard it. We evaluated.
You said it was there, you didn't like it, you disregarded it.
Okay.
That's a disregard by
We
definition.
thought that the chokers and the center island were a better solution for Belair. That's why.
Why choke points and islands in the middle of a road versus a speed hump?
Yeah, that's a speed hump.
And when you're talking to the people and they're actually telling you what they want, and there was clearly a vote there, and you have the option to ask us again and to have a vote, and you're ignoring that.
No,
I
I assure you that I'm not ignoring you. And if I gave you that impression, I apologize.
Something
that absolutely
is your own stuff, your own work.
Something that is being ignored certainly is our city code, which says that Belair Drive is already at current allowance, 25% over current allowance. You're saying you're going to increase it from 8,500 trips a day to 10,000 trips a day. By my basic mathematic understanding, that's more than 25% over the allowance. So from a start level, before you build your 3 hotels, your 2,500 houses, as I'm very confused is on the city website now, because my understanding was the conceptual site plan was curbed down to 1,800, but your website now says it's back up to 2,500.
Okay, excuse me. I still had a question on the floor.
Yeah.
My question was not what you're talking about. My question on the floor is, why were speed humps disregarded for consideration in lieu of or in light of 2 plans that offered an island or barriers to narrow the road, making choke points, which are difficult to navigate? It doesn't matter if you're a senior citizen or an 18-year-old. They are difficult to navigate.
So
my question on the floor is, why did Public Works disregard it and not allow St. John's to consider that as one of the proposals to present to us?
So the reason is we believed, incorrectly perhaps, that that would not be supported by the community. That community would object to speed humps. Because we have dealt with other communities in traffic calming
Have you dealt with the
requests.
communities in Bowie?
Yes, and other communities in Bowie, in traffic calming requests, that have asked us to look at other options other than speed humps because they objected to them. That's why. And if there's strong support for speed humps, we're absolutely willing to look. Those are traffic calming measures, and we could plot 4 speed humps down here. And if that's something that people think is a better solution than this, that's why we're here. That is exactly why we're here. But I don't think, there wasn't like everybody raised their hand for speed humps. There was about, it wasn't 50-50, but yeah, but this is not the entire community either. So, but it's a very good point. If there's a lot of people, I would love to hear from others, pro, against speed humps versus these type of measures. These type of measures, they're being used on other roadways. They maybe are, some people think they're a little more attractive. They don't give you the hump thing when you go over, etc. Yes, ma'am.
I wondered why the city is relying on a survey done by a developer and why we aren't doing our own traffic study. I live in a side street where people go speeding down the side streets, and I'm worried about traffic calming on Belair causing more flow into the side streets that's where we need to get traffic calming humps or not on Belair.
So for side streets, for other areas of concern, so this project, it was not born from what the city's program called the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program, which the city has adopted a neighborhood traffic management program. several years ago. But I want to make it clear, that's not the genesis of this project. The genesis of this project was
realize
council's
that.
rules saying, hey, I want you to put in
But if you
four
are doing
measures.
something that affects
Yes.
the entire neighborhoods, all the neighborhoods that surround Bel Air, you need to do a study about how that will impact the neighborhoods. Because we're going to have people diverted into the neighborhoods because Bel Air is not a
Right.
straight line, it curves,
You know,
so people will cut through.
And unfortunately, you know, we're not in a position where we can study every street in the neighborhood based on this thing in advance. What we will do is continue to respond to concerns about traffic on streets through the neighborhood traffic
Well,
management
I'm
program.
concerned this is going to decrease my property values, quite frankly. Because if you make our main thoroughfare into a choke point, you're going to have people who don't want to live here anymore. I'm one of them.
So if I'm understanding your comment right, is your objection is to the traffic calming measures in Bel Air altogether?
Absolutely, because I think that is going to cause significant problems to the streets adjoining it, and those weren't considered, because you're
Yeah.
just considering what's coming in from Melford.
I understand.
And that's solving one problem, but it's creating others.
Right, and I appreciate your input, and we'll take it, but I want to highlight, you know, traffic calming is sort of, you know, it raises, you know, even in the ITE manual on traffic calming, it talks about once you start implementing traffic calming, it raises a lot of concerns one way or the other. Montgomery County had to deal with a lot of complaints, et cetera, about should we do it, shouldn't we do it. So here's a suggestion. I'm worried about putting any traffic calming on Bel Air because of what it's going to do someplace else. And there were other questions about we need to do more traffic calming on Bel Air.
Well, I wanted to bring up one other thing. Is my daughter, when I moved here, was unable to cross the street because because the traffic volume was so great. You have little kids who walk to school, and you're creating more traffic, and there's no stoplights that absolutely stop the traffic. And there are certain places on Bel Air where it crosses Stony Brook and a couple of other places where it's high time we had at least one stoplight so that little kids can get to school up to Tasker or over to any of the elementary schools.
Can I take a question right here?
Thank you. I actually was related to what she's saying because I live 1 block in from Bel Air. And I use Bel Air a lot, and so I'm all in favor of what you want to do for Bel Air. But I live on Buckingham, which is the other street that people cut across. And as soon as you make it less appealing to drive on Bel Air, our already existing terrible problem on Buckingham is going to get a lot worse. And Buckingham is very curvy, and there's very few places, very few driveways on Buckingham that aren't in the middle of an S-curve. The traffic that's driving 35 to 45 miles an hour down our street, and we have a speed gun so we know, we've been actually checking so we can speak, you know, with actual numbers. The average is 35 to 45 miles an hour. I know that at that speed, when you come around the curve in either direction, by the time you see my driveway and me coming out, you could not stop.
No.
I can't even count the times coming out of my driveway that I have to roll my car back in drive and step on the gas and speed back into my driveway and not hit. The car across the street from us, the house across the street, they have to park in the street because they have a big family. In the last couple of years, their car has been hit, parked in front of their house 5 times. Buckingham is a very big problem too. And I'm very concerned about making Bel Air not as attractive because I think Buckingham is already maybe a bigger, you know, attraction to cut across, especially with the new shopping center on some Marketplace Drive. And I mean,
I can't answer to that, because if they're going at 197, you're way over Buckingham, they cut timber the same way, and there's an elementary school on that, and the Tasker kids walk right at the end of Belair.
Right, I'm just asking you to please consider it, that street and obviously the other side streets, but that's, Buckingham was a really big one.
Yes, sir. So, I'm all for the speed bumps and the stop signs. But I think we also need to take into consideration, like this lady behind me was saying, once we start making Bel Air less favorable, we're making a lot of these other streets where we live on the side streets more favorable. So then, I want a speed hump on Keyport. Everyone, and I think that's great. I think we should put speed humps on every residential street in this city. Now, elaborating a little further, I'm going to go way down the road. I think Bowie should look at asking the governor's office, he's been great with traffic since he's been in office, at widening Route 3 between Bel Air and 450. Until we make other routes more favorable, Bel Air is going to continue to have the traffic. It's great that we're widening 197. Now we need to widen this traffic jam that happens every single day on northbound 3 between Bel Air and 450.
I'm Joe Minard, I'm the planning director for Bowie, and there was a design plan done for Route 3 a few years ago, probably 10 or some, more than 10 years ago. And that design plan is to widen and access control Route 3 from Route 50 all the way up into Anne Arundel County. There just isn't any funding to build it. There's an interchange plan at 450, so it has been considered, but the state just put out their program for the coming year, and that project continues to be on hold. So it's a matter of resources. It's been studied. It needs to move into the engineering phase where they can actually figure out what they're going to build and how much it's going to cost. But there's really no, I guess there are other priorities. There's competing priorities in the city itself. The highest priorities of the council are Maryland 197 and Maryland 450. So Route 3 is kind of further down the line. But it has been studied, and that point that you're making is...
I've heard of that plan to redo that intersection. But do you know if that plan includes widening Route 3 to 3 lanes between Bel Air and 450?
It does.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so the reason I didn't raise my hand about the humps is because I wanted more data. Everybody in here is asking for more data. So I went on the ITE right now, and I looked quickly, and it looks like the humps actually are better percentage-wise, I'm reading very quickly, than the diversions. So I'm hearing people in this room saying that the humps and the stop signs would help, but I think we need to see more information presented. These are just pictures, but we all want more data, and in order to make more informed decisions, we want to know how you guys came up with the decisions to put these in versus humps or stop signs, and what it really will do to the roads. So,
Yeah, and that's exactly what Mike said, that the humps were in the 20% range versus, theoretically, in control or calming traffic versus the diverters.
Yeah, they look better.
Yeah. They look better in terms of slowing you down.
Right.
But there are people who don't think they're better because
They're the
probably they
people
don't want to be
that
slowed
don't
down.
wanna slow
Yes, sir.
I'm seeking clarification. Do I understand that under the existing law, we have to have traffic calming before the developer can begin construction? And if so, then who decides what the nature of that traffic calming would be?
So it was an agreement that the city agreed, or actually the city recommended approval of the plan. They provided conditions. It's not a law, it was a condition of the approval.
Well, I was told today that we are mandated by law to do traffic calming if the developer gets to go ahead to build. Which is it?
No, it is not that. It is a condition of the city's approval for this particular development. It was a condition of approval for this particular development. And then, as I said earlier, the council's condition did not include what the measures were. They just said traffic calming measures. And the way...
The city's committed to traffic calming, in other words, somewhere.
On Belair, the agreement was 4 measures on Belair between 3 and Kenhill.
So it's a good time to have, because it was mandated.
Well, that's a good question. I don't think if the community was completely in opposition to this, that we couldn't make the council aware, and they may ask questions about, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. Right now, it's direction from the council.
I think the council was aware that no one in this community wanted Melford. And editorials ran, and the council still voted to have it, contrary to what the voting public wanted.
So the scope of this meeting is not about Melford development. It's about traffic calming in Belair. So I'm not at all prepared to talk about that.
Quick question on definition. Earlier you mentioned there were a number of alternatives that are in the ITE structure. You said diversion, traffic diversion is considered a calming method, is that correct?
Yes.
Was there any consideration given to diversion of traffic off or onto Route 3 North or Route 3 South as opposed to going through onto Belair? So because there is a roadway there, obviously it's a fully signalized interchange, all that kind of stuff there. But if that's an option under calming, I'm curious about that.
It was not considered.
That should be the option, and it might be spiking our nose off, fire face, or whatever it's called. I would assume to have a guardrail there is to have, if it's 2,000 apartments coming in, you're going to talk about, 4,000 to 8,000 additional cars for the people that live there, people going to the shopping, people going to the hotels. And if the builder, my understanding is the builder widened and improved the intersection at 301 and 450, that everybody coming out of his complex should have to turn right and go up to that intersection to access their roads. Belair was built to service the existing homes that were originally put there, not for future mega projects to cut through streets that, like the one parent said, I've seen kids trying to cross the street because they're just going to their friend's house to play, or a dog that gets loose from their chain running. It was never intended to put those that already live here in peril. And if nothing else, think outside the box. What about something like an easy pass? Everybody, for the people that live in the community, they're the only ones that can access Belair Drive. You go to once you show your driver's license, you get an easy pass kind of thing you put on your windshield. You can come in and out of Belair, but no one else can now. And you can do all kinds of stop signs.
Can I take that question from the gentleman?
Yeah, to that gentleman's point, why was it not considered an option?
To divert the traffic?
Yeah.
You would restrict all of the movements at the interchange by doing that. It's not just people coming out of Melford, there's people coming off of northbound Route 3, southbound Route 3, that would impact
You could make
much
it
larger.
You could make it very easy to take the traffic that is coming out of Melford and offer it only 2 options.
Yes.
Either going northbound with 1 lane would be heading off to the exit for northbound, which is on the right-hand side. You could also proceed underneath the highway, and there you find yourself with an entrance to go southbound. So any traffic coming out that way could be routed to either one of the directions on that. Incoming traffic coming from Route 301 coming up could still go into Melford, could still turn into Belair, so you wouldn't restrict people who live there. You could have a complete setup where the only modifications are made to the exit or the two lanes going out of Melford?
But in answer to the gentleman's question about why the diverters weren't considered, that was beyond the charter of what the agreement was. The agreement was traffic calming measures between 3 and Kenhill, not diverting traffic from Melford Boulevard. So that was outside of the scope of this project.
Is that because the council failed to ask the proper questions?
I don't know.
Yeah, they grew up in a nice little community in Ohio. They didn't have problems with speed bumps, they didn't have to put them in. Their police force did their job. And you didn't go over 24 miles an hour in that city, ever. And you never wanted to drive through it if you could possibly avoid it. And you should have your police chief standing right next to you, asking, telling us why they're not doing their job.
Great. Were they invited to this meeting?
No, not in person. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Two questions. One, how wide is the distance between this choke point you talk about? You've got the 12 foot on either side for the placement.
It's 22 feet, 10-foot lanes and a foot.
Is it wide enough for 2 cars to go simultaneously through?
Absolutely, yes.
On both directions for both types of choke points set up?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I can still drive as fast as I want.
Really?
And just simply kind of swerve a little bit one side or the other and go right on through.
The goal is to get you to drive at 25.
Well, that's true, and I do. But, again, this is the perfect opportunity for the younger generation to get out there and say, now, can I make that a little faster? Can I weave a little bit more? Can I get there quicker? The second thing is, once you get through the choke points, what a relief. Now I can speed up and make up time that I lost back there. Okay? Now, back to this gentleman's point, very valid. One, let's put the bike back in Bowie. All right? We've got the enforcement of 25 miles an hour. Let's put the fines up there where they make a difference to those that are going to get it. Now, I was thinking a while back, that anywhere between $300 to $500 for your first traffic speeding ticket.
Is there other comments, questions?
No. Make it, like the gentleman said, make our enforcement legit. Turn the speed cameras on. Turn them on 24/7, not the little time we have in the school zone.
Can I get your comment or question?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with the police enforcement. I think that definitely makes sense. Going back to the specific measures, personally, I am a fan of choke points, but only if they're really done well. And to me, I would completely agree with you. What you said, I have the experience coming from Belair towards Route 3, where it narrows. I go there with my children on the trailer, and cars see that as an opportunity. How can I squeeze in between me with my little children, get there as quickly as possible? So I see, especially with the very first suggestion we saw, I see that as very dangerous. You go through with the bike, and then a car comes from the side, didn't see you. Also, it won't be plowed for bicycles in the winter at all, so you'll just have snow there. The only way of choke point that really would work is something that is actually blocking at least half the lane, which would force cars to stop as soon as there's oncoming traffic. It's going to be really inconvenient, which is the point. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And also not just, put up a 6-inch concrete thing and some sign, but, put trees. There's something that's obstructing vision. That's the main point. That's slowing down drivers, or actually it's making speed up drivers. Belair is very convenient to drive. It's a very nice road, but it's very convenient to drive. The only way to stop people from, some people are speeding because they're speeding. Most people are speeding just because intuitively they are going that speed. The road is built to be driven at that speed. So the only way to change that is either to make it look less safe for the driver by making it narrow, put some obstructions in there, or a very heavy police enforcement. I think those are the only two options. Otherwise, it's going to be very punctual effect just on this very spot, and even there, not completely. And of course, that's the question, is it something that is desired or not? That's a completely different topic, but to make it work, it has to be something that actually makes the road in general less attractive, not just for small spots, and if then really in such a way that as soon as there's a little bit more volume, cars have to slow down drastically or stop.
I didn't understand your comment about this measure
Yes.
here, though. Can you say it again?
The problem is that as the car comes through, it first passes the barrier on the right, so they go a bit to the left, then they have to swerve back to the right, and they come closer to the bike lane. And the one problem is that quite a few cars will not slow down at all, and as soon as they start swerving, it makes it more dangerous. First of all, the second thing is that you'll have the big signposts up. We saw most children on the bicycle will completely disappear behind them, and drivers will be focused on navigating the obstacle, not on anything else going on there. That's if you study when cities implemented bike paths, for example, whenever you have a bike path that is separated from the roadway and it joins the roadway just in front of an intersection, you create a lot more accidents because drivers are not aware of the bicycles. So whenever there's a dangerous point, actually bicycles and cars have to be together so that the drivers can be aware of that. And as I said, this reminds me very much of the situation just as you come from Belair towards Route 3, because it's a very similar place, and I experience it almost every time.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and the edge lines that are on Belair Drive are not bike lane markers, but I can see how they are perceived as bike lane markers. And it is true, if you ride your bike over here and the cars are over here, you do introduce some other risks, especially when you cut out to go around the car.
And especially at that point, at the moment, it's the bike lane ends. And also there's no sidewalk anymore on the other side, so even the smallest children have to use the road.
Yeah, so the educated biker would not travel here, he would travel in here.
Well, you can't, because that's a shoulder, which is not intended for travel of vehicles.
No, he would travel in the travel.
On the roadway.
In the travel.
And a bicycle is not authorized on a sidewalk, or allowed by law to be on the road itself. There are no bike lanes within any of these roads.
Right.
There are bike routes. You should know it's 25 miles an hour. Meets all the requirements of Maryland traffic law, et cetera. So we have all the rights to the road. And we can't operate in the shoulder because the shoulder is just for parked vehicles, stop commercial vehicles, et cetera. That's where most of your common road debris is as well. We're going to pop a tire and bad things happen.
Right.
So
And I think that's exactly what you're saying, is trying to navigate the shoulder here is more risky than staying in the travel.
Legally, I can't drive a bicycle on the shoulder.
I've got one question, which is, have you ever considered, the traffic slows down when it goes through that area of Belair where you have the median with the trees? What about a median? It's pretty. You can put trees in it, it would slow down traffic, and it would narrow
I don't think
it.
there'd be right of way for it. You'd have to take private property.
No, it's between the two, so you make it into two separate lanes.
Yeah, but you would still have to widen the street enough where the traffic would.
I don't know.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to kind of rewind a little bit and revisit why these four are confined between Kenhill and Route 3. Because I know you said something about the camera, which has already been addressed. It only helps right there in front of the school. But logic would tell you the traffic that's going to be going into Melford is not going to be coming from Kenhill. No one's going to get off of 50, come down Kenhill, and then come into Belair. When they can just go down 50 to 301 and then get off right on the ramp. The traffic from going into Melford is going to be coming from 450 all the way down. So it doesn't make any sense to stop your traffic calming in Kenhill, because all that traffic is the cut through that should have been addressed a long time ago going to the giant shopping center. Because none of those people live in the neighborhood either.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that.
That would be a question really for them as to why you stopped at Kenhill
Was it based solely on the traffic camera? Because that's not.
No, it was, that was what the council's agreement was, 4 measures between Kenhill.
Because that's really going to ignore half of your problem.
The rest of that,
The rest of Belleville, because that's where it's going to come.
I mean, I think that's what the agreement was, to ask St. John's to look at that section of Belleville, not the rest.
Because no one's going to come down Stony Brook and hook a right and go towards Melford. They're just going to go up around. And no one's going to come off of 50 through Kenhill. They're going to come from 450 and 197, and instead of going all the way around and coming back, they're going to try to cut this through. And that's where, and that's not being addressed at all. That whole section of the road, that whole half.
The answer to that question is actually that stretch is the stretch where there's very, very few driveways. That's Belair Meadows. I mean, I live on Kilbourne. That's my backyard. And people across the street, it's their backyard. There are almost no intersections, or sorry, no driveways in that vicinity.
I'm talking from Kenhill to 450.
I mean, where they have drawn these calming things is probably on Belair. It's the one that has the fewest driveways. That part's obvious. One of them is
particularly that one section. Yes.
Well, that one section is.
There's no driveways.
I mean, I live on Kilbourne, and that's my backyard. You've drawn one of these things 2 houses down from me. So yeah, I know that stretch pretty well. And as far as the traffic there, you know, I can look out my back windows and I can see people going 35 most of the time, and you know, that 85 percentile, I believe it because I can see it, and I can hear the motorcycles going a heck of a lot faster, and I can see the 16-wheelers going a heck of a lot faster sometimes too.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I live off of Beaverdale, which is one of the first right-hand turns that come in. And all that's going to do is displace traffic right into there. It's going to be more desirable, like you said, to make it better, less desirable. So I'm not blaming them for that. Well, why isn't the city addressing the fact of why do we start putting speed humps? And I'm not saying every side street off the Belair, but we know what the major thoroughfares are. Beaverdale, Stony Brook, Kenhill. All those streets are the major thoroughfares. So why don't you address just those streets?
Yeah, so, and again, and so what I would encourage folks to do, because the way we would address streets normally is through that program. And in fact, in Beaverdale, we actually had recently, Public Works had a request from a resident, and so we did a study. We did do a study on Beaverdale. You know, based on the city's adopted program, that street currently, current count, would not qualify for physical measures. It would qualify for what we call.
The survey wasn't good enough. It wasn't long enough. The counter was out for 2 days. 2 days is not a large enough sample.
It may not have the volume of traffic, but if the small volume of traffic is driving really, really fast, it should qualify.
And I'm not even going to come on you for that right there. But I'm going to say, once you do this on Belair, do your study then.
Yeah, and then I would say that the study is, I mean, the neighborhood traffic management program doesn't go away when this is done. It's forever, you know, as long as the city has it adopted. So we respond to those requests all the time, and I certainly will continue to respond to those requests. So
there's a daycare right up the street where the kids get dropped off. That was my issue. It's not just me and my house, but you got kids running around the street and stuff. You got people blazing through there.
And I do want to point out, you know, the neighborhood traffic management program, even though Beaverdale, quote, didn't meet the criteria for physical measures, humps or chokers or whatever it is, the way the city adopted the program is that they would still consider funding measures if there is, I call it, it's not written this way in the program, I call it significant agreement. The significant agreement is very challenging. It means 90% of the residents on the street and 60% of the residents on the side street would petition the city to install speed humps. And from experience, I've never seen the street be able to.
But here's the issue with that. 90% of the residents didn't agree with all this other stuff. So why do we have to have 90% of the residents?
Yeah, that's what the city's policy is.
I get it, but you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, I don't have to make the point. I already made the point. Because, like I said, once you do this, we all know what's going to happen.
But if traffic were to increase or speeds were to increase and we do counts and it does support it, then, you know, then Certainly, the city would
Every
be.
time there's a problem out on 301.
Right.
Or 3.
Yeah.
Because the people want to get up to 450, so they get off of 50, go Belair, Beaverdale, Beechtree, stuff, and run up to 450.
And it sounds like you've made your requirements unusually extremely high, so you don't have to do it.
So actually,
90% is not a reasonable.
the city's adopted policy is, basically Xerox from Prince George's County policy, except that they added that we would consider installing measures even if it didn't qualify. So that 90% thing was something that the city added to Prince George's County to allow, hey, if everybody wants this thing, maybe we should do it. And that kind of
90% just seems very high.
And again, that's if the study does not meet the criteria for physical
But
measure.
that's like I said, this Island Beaver, if you require a certain volume of traffic and you only have this volume and it's not there, but this entire volume is doing 40 and a 25.
So
that should mean something.
Right, so the study doesn't just take into account volume, it takes into account volume, speed.
So how
Is there
long was the
sidewalk?
study?
Is there,
How long is the study?
how long did we put the counters out? We normally put the counters out on Monday, pick them up on Friday, so you get a half a day Monday, half a day Friday, and 3 days.
And the
in
city
between.
believes that's sufficient?
Yes.
What, it's not.
Yes.
The city needs to come out, one of the city council needs to come sit on the street for a month, and then tell me that the traffic's not done.
I like to have a council member pull out a Kenhill or a Keithford Lane and try to get on the Belair going in either direction. Either direction.
At what time frame of the year was this study done?
So we typically try, it's a good question. We don't typically do it if we're expecting snow. We actually do care. We typically try to do it not when school is in session. So we don't always meet that in case, if there's a high demand to get the thing done. But we typically try to do studies.
Well, my understanding was the study that was done on Stony Brook with the new marketplace apartments was done in January when we all had that.
So
that's why I'm asking when this study was done.
It was before school started.
Right, we're talking about
So we're talking summertime with less traffic.
we are talking about two different firms, the Stony Brook
No, I'm
Marketplace
talking
thing
about
was-
her, because I understand the Stony Brook study was
That's,
done then.
yeah, that was not a neighborhood traffic
But
management.
this one, what time frame?
And the date.
And what were the numbers?
You're correct, they were done in summer. It was done in August.
That was exactly
I'll do it again.
what you said you
Right.
were
We have to
supposed
do
to
it
do.
Thank you.
So now the floor, please.
It's not, it's really not that hard to do these.
Excuse me, sir, may I have the floor, please?
Absolutely.
I thank you very much. My question is related to the traffic studies done in Bowie on the streets. What was the date, the methodology, and the time frame for the traffic study for Belair Drive you're referring to tonight?
When I was speaking on this issue about the traffic study, it was a traffic study done under the city's neighborhood traffic management department. It's completely different than what we were talking about
I'm
here.
talking about this project for Belair Drive. That study.
Can you speak to how that?
I don't have the exact date of that study.
I heard some of the things about that study.
Probably.
I've read the study, and there were several things that stood out to me, one of which was that the city of Bowie was supposed to have streets that are A, B, C, D, E, and the standard was supposed to be a C. And Belair Drive is already over that before any other traffic comes in. The second thing was that there were going to be like about 11,000 trips a day that were going to come from Melford. And of those, I think they only projected like 3% or 5% maybe at the most were going to come through the neighborhoods. Now, I think you all can understand, you've got Melford there, you can go south on 301 and you hit a failing intersection. You go north on 301, you hit a failing intersection. You've got, this development has no major stores, no major food stores, no churches, no schools, no community center, no banks, and maybe it has a bank, I don't know. But in any case, what are people going to do? They go this way, that way, they're tied up. They go through the neighborhoods. I mean, it's the easiest way to do it. There's also something I've read recently about the Waze effect. I don't know if anybody's read about that, WAZE, that had significant problems in Tacoma Park. What it does is when there's a tie-up in one direction or another, it diverts people through the neighborhood. Once they know those routes, they take them consistently. So basically, it seems to me that we've got a situation where we've got streets that are already over capacity, and we're going to just be putting all this additional traffic on them. And I don't think that in some way we can just block it off somehow or another and only allow residents and guests and residents to come through.
So, the topic of tonight's discussion is the remediation for Belair Drive. There has been a reference to a traffic study for baseline documentation for traffic on Belair Drive. I want to know specific information about that study, please. It's been referenced, and I want to have access to the information and the approximate when it was done, the duration of it, how long, how many days it was done, and what technology was used. Please don't tell me 19th century pneumatic tubes, because I'm not going to listen to that. What was the technology used to monitor the traffic on Belair Drive?
So I was just asking Joe if we have it posted. I think we might. If we don't, we will post it.
Okay.
Where would it be posted?
I still want to know the
On the
information
city's
now.
website.
I want to know the
posted.
information now, when it was done.
It's not
It is
posted.
not,
It is not
posted, and two, the information, as I pointed out earlier, that you have about your conceptual site plan is factually inaccurate according to what you passed in the minutes from March. The numbers are bloated, and if I am not mistaken, it should be 1,800 homes that are going to be going up there. Your city units. You on the website, the city of Bowie has stated 1,000 apartments, multifamily for residential, 1,000 for senior, and 500 townhomes. That is an incorrect number. All of those figures are incorrect, and you're misleading the community. I have a question for St. John's, because we have not heard.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
So that is the conceptual site plan yield, and that was refined down on the preliminary plan. So there's two different numbers. There's a lesser number on the most recent plan.
Correct,
And
but that should be what is updated and publicized on the website. We should be providing the most recent numbers for the community.
If I heard you right, the conceptual site plan, if there's a website link to the conceptual site plan, the higher numbers would be the correct numbers, because that's
It's
what was
regarding
approved.
this evening's meeting. So when you pull up this evening's meetings, the numbers that come up are not the most recent numbers. They do not reflect the minutes and what was agreed upon earlier this year. When you guys came up with this plan that's being presented this evening, what collaboration did you partake in with our emergency service, medical services, our firefighters? What collaboration did you guys participate in?
We have not engaged.
No, I'm asking St. John's. I appreciate you being here, but I'm asking them.
We're not the permitting agency. We worked with Public Works, and we shared a design, and we discussed the aspects of whether they were acceptable per industry standards, and that was the nature of our collaboration. So these aren't anything new or unique in terms of a novel approach.
Correct, but standard practice when you're going to engage in traffic calming measures on such a highly trafficked road in a residential area is to collaborate with the emergency medical services so that you can ensure that what you're participating in and what you're going to implement is not going to slow down those emergency medical services. So I'm wondering why we're coming and presenting this information when that hasn't been done on the front end, so that you can understand whether or not there's going to be medians for people to pull over to. So if you have an ambulance running down those roads, these streets are not wide enough for emergency medical services to go through and have people pull up on the side of the road. We don't have the medians up the side of the road. You've already heard from many residents who said there's cars parked all along these streets. So if someone comes to one of your little congestion points and a truck tries to go through, where are the cars going to go? Are they going to go into people's driveways, into people's front yards? What collaboration are we going to do going forward?
And what is the timing on that? Because you should know a timing from point A to point B for a fire truck.
These devices are 20 or 30 feet long. This is less obstructive than a traffic signal that's got 10, 20, 30 cars backed up at the traffic signal, and a fire truck or ambulance or police pulls up to the signal and has to make their way through the intersection.
We're talking about increasing the number of the cars on the roads by a huge number.
I mean, you can easily pull up government websites that provide you with examples from Montgomery County as well as several issues that have been in Seattle and Boulder, Colorado, where they have implemented things like this and they have absolutely found, without a doubt, that you've slowed emergency medical services down by sometimes 15, 30 seconds, and that equals the difference between the life and the death of the person who is in that ambulance. So I'm asking, if you have not collaborated with our emergency medical services, what are you going to do going forward, given the current problem and the magnitude of that problem?
I'm sorry, given the current problem of emergency response?
Correct. And when we're talking about increasing, these roads are not, as Mr. Bowman pointed out, we've got A, B, C, D, okay? These roads are standard for C. We're already 25% over those numbers. So you're picking and choosing what part of your city code you're going to abide by. 90% to get a speed bump on Beaverdale, but when we're talking about a 25% overage on Belair Drive, that's fine, we can disregard that. So you're going to increase your numbers up to 10 to 11,000 trips per day. That's going to obviously affect the traffic. So what are we talking about in terms of medical response times? And how are we going to collaborate with the Bowie Fire Department in order to ensure that that doesn't create a problem going forward?
So in response to how we will collaborate with emergency response with respect to the design of whatever traffic measures we decide to put on there, that is part of our design process. It's something that Public Works does, as we would share it with emergency response to make sure that they don't object to the proposed measure. In response to the question of, oh, there's more traffic on Belair, what is the Public Works going to do about how much more time it will take emergency response because of the additional traffic? That is beyond the scope of this project. I don't have an answer for you.
Well, I think that these people deserve that response, because if I'm on Belair Drive and I call 911 and what you're doing increases the time that it takes for 911 to get to my house, the community absolutely does deserve it.
Right. So I think though that the information, and a lot of people have asked, hey, can we post the information about the study? So the study does talk about what the increase in the traffic on Belair is expected to be. And so that information, though it's not currently on the web, we'll get it on the web and it'll be available for everybody to read. But I think St. John's has been fair in explaining, yeah, the development is going to have impact on Belair Drive traffic.
Which is already above the standard by which you think is a reasonable amount to go down the road right now. Right now, it's already above the standard.
Above the standard.
So you're putting in 2,500 units in Melford, and this is not going to put it further above the standard. It's not going to break your code more. You've already broken the code. So now it doesn't matter if you break it further. That's my reading of the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just like, oh well.
I think that's a different question. I don't know that there's a code violation for putting more cars on the street. It is the desired state of the street. And yes, Melford will put more cars on the street. And I think everybody's been upfront about that.
And there is traffic out there today that's non-local traffic that's cutting through the neighborhood. The goal that we're trying to accomplish is to address the speeding, address the non-local, the cut-through traffic. Is Melford going to add some to this? Yes, but we're trying to do things that will also help to get the other non-local people out of the traffic.
Maybe it's the city's job to try to restrict ingress from Melford into the city. Yeah.
Sir, can I?
In other words, not do what the board was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the comment was made earlier about, is there a solution to just, to change the traffic pattern and not allow cars coming from Melford Boulevard into Belair?
Sir, may I ask you, please? May I please start?
Maybe that's the city's responsibility if Melford is.
Well, yeah, we'd have to give that some thought. I don't know that there's state roads and city roads involved with that. So, but we took down your information. I don't know that that's a solution that could be adopted, but expensive.
Sir, I'm sorry. I asked you for the floor about 15 minutes ago. I would like to make a statement.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Please, thank you. The premise of the meeting, as I understand it, was premised on a traffic study on Belair Drive. On behalf.
So the premise of this meeting, the purpose of this
you
meeting.
understand what I'm saying? It was all based on the problem, a perceived traffic problem with Belair Drive. Is that correct?
So the purpose of this meeting was strictly to present the calming measures between 3 and Kenhill that we have worked with.
References were made early this evening concerning the
But the
traffic.
purpose of this meeting
Matter-
was to
Yes.
present the information and gather input from the community.
Based on baseline data, obviously. For
I don't know.
For the traffic on Belair Drive.
Wait,
Okay. Is there a baseline data of accurate and competent of the traffic on Belair Drive that your office has access to? Does anybody know how many cars drive up and down Belair Drive every day? This gentleman has mentioned numerous times.
We've done counts on Belair Drive. I don't know when the last set of counts we've done.
Our study from the Conceptual Site Plan and from preliminary plan referenced traffic counts that were done by the State Highway Administration on Belair Drive immediately west of the off-ramp, the southbound off-ramp. That count showed about 8,500.
And that was done when again?
I don't recall the date. It was done by State Highway Administration sometime.
Where is that data?
Pardon?
Where is the data?
It's obtained off the State Highway Administration website. You can get it right from there.
What year?
I don't
I
know.
thought you
I don't
said
have the year off the top of my head. This
Yeah,
was,
that's
this was all vetted and reviewed through the CFP and the preliminary plan. The studies were done in 2014 and 16.
Okay, so what was the 2009 you mentioned earlier?
2009.
You mentioned a study done in 2009.
Was that ITE? Maybe that was the ITE. I don't know that I meant, somebody may have mentioned it. It was an ITE study pertaining to traffic calming
Okay, so
scenarios,
that's not
different
the study
studies
on
that
the
they've done.
traffic.
Well, I guess what my summation would be that after accessing and reviewing the data that's being referred to, that until that data is deemed accurate, competent, appropriate, and where everybody can share it, I don't think we should go any further with this discussion until we know for sure that A, we know how many cars are using Belair Drive, we know how fast they're going, and we can look at every single car, like, oh my gosh, this car went 75, this car went 80. I walk my dogs down there, spend many hours a week on that stretch of road. It is horrendous. This is not St. John's Properties. I have no problems with St. John's Properties, but I just feel like we cannot have a logical discussion of an issue that is based on the fact that many of the people in this room feel that there's a whole lot of cars on Belair Drive going way too fast. It's a city issue. It's not St. John's. I have no problems with St. John's at all in this regard. But it's a city issue that at least needs to be looked at and studied and discussed before we go 1 inch further with this end result.
I would offer to you that we did a traffic study for the conceptual site plan that was submitted to the city. It was reviewed by city staff. It was submitted to State Highway Administration. They have 6 offices internal to State Highway Administration that review it, and it was submitted to Park and Planning, and they have staff there that review it. It has been scrutinized very heavily. Oftentimes we get comments saying, you need to fix this, you need to do this, you need to change this. Sometimes we go through 2 or 3 iterations of comments from the agencies before we have an approved study. That happened for the CSP. The study was done again for the preliminary plan, brand new study, and it went through the same review process.
And this is, when you say study, we're talking loosely as what some people call traffic count and traffic speed and so forth. Is that correct?
That was our traffic impact study, which had some of these recommendations, which were accepted by the city council.
But we don't know that.
I remember I went to the county council, the planning board, and at one point I brought up Belair Drive, and they said, oh, well, that wasn't part of the study that we did. So that's
correct.
That surprised me very, very much.
That's correct. It's not. The county has, Park and Planning at the county has an adequate public facilities ordinance that's mandated by law, a certain set of requirements. The city has a city code for average daily traffic on residential streets. It's a different code, different process. We went through the county's adequate public facilities process, which included an assessment of the city's public streets. And that was all included in the review at that time.
Yes, ma'am.
I think the consensus here is that none of these options are good. We already have a problem, and we don't really have a choice in whatever we do, and it's not going to work for us. And it's not your problem because they're not your streets, it's not your driveway, it's not your neighborhood. And I drive in old cars, as old as I am. I really do not want speed bumps or humps. I can't keep repairing wheels, axles, tires. I'm not interested in that, and I live on a side street off of Belair, and I've already had my car hit with over $2,000 of damage. So that again is a factor of traffic and speed. And I'm just not interested in the humps or bumps, but I'm not sure that this is a good alternative. And my additional side comments, that I think that your group needs to do their homework and come prepared. I find it really unprofessional that you have no supplemental materials, you're throwing numbers out. I want a paper when I come here, I want to see what the information is, where are the statistics, where are the studies, where are the numbers, when were they done? I need you to show that to me. You're just spitting out numbers, this year, this study, this and that. I want to see it, so I think that you really need to bring diagrams, bring handouts. I can't even see that from here. I need you to do your homework and come prepared, and additionally, I find it unprofessional, disrespectful, and rude that you two gentlemen sitting down have been on your cell phones, talking and laughing. I watched you. Don't think that was unseen. I find that really rude. I'm here because this affects me. This is my neighborhood and my driveway. So I would appreciate respect that we are here trying to give you information, and I've seen you on your cell phone, I've seen you talking and smiling. So please respect us because this affects us.
And it's not funny to us. No, it's not funny.
This is the rest of my life, whether my car gets beat up, whether my car gets hit outside of my house and get parked, how long it takes for me to get to work. Like all of this, it affects me, and I would appreciate the respect.
Here, here.
Have you thought about a PowerPoint that will have perhaps been more visible for everybody?
We weren't sure if they would have.
They're
City
easy
council
to put together.
Any other?
27,
Yes, ma'am.
we have the technology
I have
to
one
do something
question.
a little bit better than
Um,
a paper diagram.
Now that we've heard from everybody, what's the next step?
It's ridiculous.
So there's been a lot of comments, so I have to digest this a little bit. We'll certainly relay, the comments to our city council in a report. And the next step is to evaluate whether, this is the right solution or whether we need to go back to the drawing board. I mean, there's been a lot of
How will we
comments
know?
pro and for speed hump. I don't know yet. I don't know.
I mean, you didn't take any phone numbers or addresses or
Right.
anything when we
I mean,
got
it's a good question. I was pondering, whether there needs to be, if we were to modify this, whether we need to do another stakeholders meeting to see, is there, hey, that's the right answer. But I'm not so sure I'm going to come back with the right answer. There's competing, things. Again, our project here is trying to implement some calming on the road. A lot of the comments are about there's too much traffic and this kind of thing. And, the calming can do what the calming can do. It's not gonna take 8,500 cars and make it 4,000 cars. It's not gonna do that.
Sir, honestly, you've just been asked to take us seriously. We are sitting watching all of you out there smirking and smiling and on your cell phones. You present a diagram that, honest to God, I would have been ashamed to present in 1960. That's 50 years ago. And you come here with these little paper diagrams that nobody here can see. We have absolutely no idea of what you're trying to show us, how it's going to be affecting a car, what a car is going to look like as it navigates around or over. Any of these little yellow lines, I have no idea what you're trying to tell us that you're doing. And you do not, you come here and we ask you, when did you do the reports? You don't know. When did you do the reports? Well, we don't know. I mean, these are our lives, our homes, and our communities. And you do not take us seriously, and neither does St. John's. I think it is beyond insulting. You have thrown this thing down. You stand there nodding as if this is funny. It's not funny, sir. This is our lives.
So,
We're fighting to try and maintain our community. We all are. And neither Bowie nor St. John seems to either care or take us seriously.
So if somehow we have presented, or I have presented, that this meeting is just something to get by, it is not. We are here to hear your comments. That's what the meeting was for. Yeah, point taken, we should have had some better graphics, and I apologize for that. But if I have somehow led you to believe that I am not on your team trying to make the city, trying to improve Belair Drive.
I absolutely believe you are not on our team.
Well, I apologize that I
absolutely believe 100%.
Can I ask if there's any other questions?
Yes, I got it. Why did the study stop up by the church, where everyone that lives on Belair Drive, from Kenhill to Stony Brook, is the busy spot of Belair?
So that question was asked earlier about why was it there. That because this particular project was the result of the agreement that the city made with St. John's about prior to developing, they needed to implement measures between Kenhill and 3. That's why. Because that was the direction.
Who in the city came up with that particular
Why did it stop behind the church?
space to study? Say the city came up with, you will study from here to here and take care of that.
Correct.
Who in the city came up with that?
I don't know. It was
in the
agreement.
I think that the impetus behind that was because you had Belair Drive between 3 and Kenhill, and then at that point at Kenhill, it kind of separated and went into the two different directions, and so the idea was to look at the main section right there between them.
It only goes in one direction. You either make a left from Kenhill or you go straight on
That's correct. That's correct. Either on Kenhill or up with Belair.
But, again, why this limit on just how far to go? I mean, that's the question, okay? It seems like you're picking on just those that live on Belair in that one section, okay? Now, I agree that speed is an issue. I agree that you're driving too fast. We have too many reckless people out there. We have too many young people on the road, by the way. Anyway. Anyway, where is, you're going to take care of speed and volume. This is going to take care of volume. Where is it going to go? Up 3? Where?
The goal is to discourage the non-local traffic to not come through the neighborhood. You've got 450 and you've got 50 as alternates. Is it going to work for all of it? Probably not. It's going to discourage some of
You're
it.
going to push them up onto 3, that even more. Push them down onto 301 and block down in that area. Then they're going to cut around and decide, well, I'll come through here and go through there. So you're going to start causing problems elsewhere. There's really no good solution to the additional traffic that's going to be coming with the development. All right, that's a given, everybody should agree with it. How do you handle it? That's the question. But in a circle, down at the base of 3, Belair. Instead of the traffic light down there, put a circle in. Slow them down before they even get there.
I'm sorry. I've lived with
That's
circles.
a thought. I don't like circles either. That's a thought.
So I want to see if we can refocus back to, and I know, I understand there's frustration with the amount of traffic and everything else, but I do want to focus on our project, which is the proposed calming measures on Belair. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Before you do that, I'm hearing that a lot of people have concerns about problems that are already existing before the new increased traffic comes in. And not only Belair, but many of us on the streets that are going to that already take the traffic in addition to Belair and will take more traffic if Belair is calm. So my question is, and this is so that you can get back to your issue, can you tell us what are the steps? Because obviously, if you can't even talk about stop signs because it's not officially a calming measure, what are the steps, what should we do to bring up additional issues or to ask the council to expand this issue and include other options and other streets? Tell us what we should do after we leave here. Because, there's a lot of concerns outside of what you have.
Well, I'm collecting your input here, and that's, one of your avenues, that's what this meeting is for. And so your comment is you would like us to examine other calming measure ideas.
Right. So
stop signs, humps, etc.
If you could let us know what our steps are after we leave here, to follow through on that, then that might open up this meeting to focus on the one issue at hand.
So, well, I don't need you to follow. I got it. You've given it to me.
George, can I just say something?
Yeah.
I'm Luna Cooper. I'm the communications manager for the city. I also live in Buckingham and used to live in Kenhill, so I know every single street you're talking about. If you are not signed up for Alert Buoy, please see me, or if you want to give me a phone number, an email, however you want to be contacted to be kept up and current about this issue, and I will make sure that you do. And I'll be back at the end. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the question was asked, the methodology that was used, and you kind of hemmed and hawed and beat around the bush. And I was speaking for, I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but she gave me some really good statistics, totally blew her off. You didn't address it. And I think you need to come back and do a few things. I think you should come back with a professional presentation to the neighborhood. I think you need to come back and readdress and show us what the methodology was. I think you need to do some more studies at, I live on Beaverdale, right, 2 doors down from them. And I know when I moved in, you were doing that study, and yes, it was in the summertime, and yes, it wasn't 5 days, it was like 2 to 3 days. And we have kids in that, right there on that street. If they're coming shooting through that neighborhood like they do all the time, somebody's gonna get injured. And if this was your neighborhood, what would you do? That's the question you need to ask. If I live there, you guys are coming into our neighborhood, you want to make money, understood. That's your bottom line. We all know that's your bottom line. But what you need to do is be honest and forthright with this community.
You're here.
Any others?
Is there a timeline for this? Is it going to be done in 6 months, a year from now, 2 years? What is?
Yeah, well, it would, if we were to proceed, it would be done, I think, in the next 6 months or so. Spring.
Spring 2018?
Correct.
So you need more information before that can be 2018, if you're taking input from all the people here. So it could be longer than that. Or have you already made up your mind?
I don't know that if we were, for example, to say, hey, a better option is to do speed humps, that we still couldn't, get that in place by spring of 2018.
So no matter what it is, it's going to be a calming structures on Belair, no matter what anybody says, in order for you guys to start construction.
Well, the council has directed that. So if the council was to say, hey, let's change that, then we would change it.
To not have any calming?
That could be an option, absolutely.
Okay.
Obviously, that non-development, some need to be calming.
I'm sorry?
Can I interject for a second? The calming is a condition of approval of the preliminary plan of subdivision for Melford.
Right.
It's a county condition. So even if the council says something different, We have to do 4 devices and provide it.
So.
What it is, that's, you know, part of the meeting.
Could possibly be stop signs.
Yeah, thank you, correct.
Just for clarification, the devices aren't specified, just the emails are specified. Be specific.
Like I said, you know, if we don't have to worry about the development, we don't worry about the traffic, all the calming issues. We're back to just regular traffic control.
If the devices are not specific yet, you don't know what they are the places on the maps where you're going to place them, are they already
What we
set?
had tonight was specific, yes.
Okay, so the spots are specific, what you're going to put there is still up in the air.
The condition of approval was not specific. It just said 4.
Right, but on your map, you've marked off 4 spots.
Right, so.
Right, so those can change still?
Yes.
Okay.
They could, these, for these kinds of measures, you know, you start to get, because of the driveways and other obstructions, you know, you're kind of limited where they can go. So these particular measures, and there was quite a bit of effort trying to figure out where they would best fit. One of them actually is planned to be where we also believe there should be another crosswalk to allow for the
Pedestrian refuge.
Makes the crossing shorter, but there's currently a sidewalk on the north side of Belair. One of the other projects that St. John's is doing is continuing a pedestrian sidewalk from Melford all the way into Belair Drive on the south side of Belair. And so we wanted to make that pedestrian pathway complete. Yeah.
I'm a little confused by the statement the gentleman made. Who has the final say then, the city or the county? Because he said it was a county requirement. So is it the county that really needs to be approached?
It started with the city as part of the review of the conceptual site plan, which was a requirement of the covenants, the restrictive covenants of Melford. So it started there. And as the process moved from the city to the county through different applications, the last application was the preliminary plan of subdivision. At that point, he carried forward, the applicant proffered the condition that it promised and agreed to with the city to make it part of its county approval in order to have that as a lasting requirement.
So now the county is saying you have to have these 4 devices, whatever they may be. So the city has no say anymore? Or am I misunderstanding?
Well, the condition says 4 devices working with the city of Bowie. It doesn't say what the devices are, but the county approval recognizes that we as the applicant are going to provide 4 devices.
So, but the county now has mandated that there will be 4 devices, period, no matter what the city does.
We proffered it. We proffered as the applicant as a sign of good faith and our commitment to what we agreed to with the city to bring it into the county approval. So the county didn't say, hey, we're going to make you do this, because it's not a county requirement. It's not derived from the county transportation requirements. It was something that we did as an applicant.
Thank you.
Yes.
The ITD study says you're only going to have a 4% reduction of these narrowings or chokers. It's basically ineffective. It's not worth putting these things in. It's not going to address the overall increase in traffic or speeds associated with development. So I think we need to get the Melford developer out of the picture completely, because it's not going to achieve what the original promised. We need to take this back to the city council, make them recognize that they're not going to achieve what was originally proposed, and that if you want to pursue traffic calming, you should invoke your own policy, your neighborhood traffic management program, which is your traffic calming policy. That will require you to do the analysis on all the roads that are affected, not only Belair Drive, not only the intersection of Route 3, but the complete stretch of Belair Drive. Not only Belair Drive, it will force you to do the analysis of the roads that feed into Belair Drive. And in addition to that, it gives the individuals in the community the right to participate in what's being decided as far as the traffic calming.
And I'll give us a 6-month timeline when there really is going to be no other choice apart from what you dictate to us now. When would there be another meeting, sir? If this is all going to be happening by spring, when is there time for another meeting when paths can change?
Yeah, I can't answer that yet. I'm not sure that we'll have another meeting. It's
You
something.
won't have another meeting, because there will not be time.
But
But you said earlier that you would have.
I said I was considering it based on all the comments that I.
So
So-
why are you taking these notes if you're not gonna have the time? I mean, what's the point in taking notes? And how do we get feedback?
What's the point even in having this, to be honest?
The point is for,
With a 6-month time.
for us to evaluate the input and apply it to the project.
I see the problem is, and it's not Melford or St. John, or it's not you. I perceive this as the city is shirking their job of controlling traffic, and they saw an opportunity to have somebody else pay for something, even if that something wasn't efficient. The city needs to stand up and do what they're supposed to do and leave the private organization out. My opinion.
This was something that was completely our proffer through our review and approval process. It was publicly vetted. It went through community information meetings, Bowie Advisory Planning Board meetings, city council meetings, and I recognize many of the faces that were at those meetings, and these things were discussed and vetted in those public venues.
And the city still hasn't done their job. You've all done your job fine, from what I can see. It's not you I have an issue with. I have an issue with my city that isn't taking care of the things they need to take care of.
Any other comments for us?
We don't want to be
Understand it
linked to the
correctly.
Melford property.
When you went in,
There's a question there.
We don't want to be linked to the Melford property, either by road access or sidewalk access. I don't really need additional strangers. I don't know walking around my kids and grandkids and my animals in my yard. Keep your sidewalk cut off at 301. Make your right ways. You can go north or south on 301. Put up a guardrail. I don't care. Just do not come on to Belair. We did not want the project, but we got forced on us. And then our city council further failed us by not making the penny pinching developers put up guardrails and other forms of egress or ingress. And I would never live there, because if I had an emergency and there was an oil spill or something and there was one way in and you couldn't get in or out to a hospital, you die. The whole plan is horrible. How it was passed, I have no idea. I do also blame the city council. I agree with you, but I partially blame the penny pinching developers that don't want to put any more money in than they have to. And it's all full time. Keep your sidewalk, keep your roadway blocked off, just don't come into Belair.
Okay, we've been here for just about 2 hours. Maybe I'll take one last question or comment.
was it your idea or the city's idea to come up with the funding for the traffic control? Did you volunteer say,
For the
oh,
traffic-
we will do it?
For the calming devices,
Yes.
it was our proffer.
Yes. Okay, it was your suggestion in the beginning to come up with it.
Yes.
Or the city saying, you come up with this, we'll do it.
No, it was our proffer.
Do you have a budgetary limit for how much you're willing to spend on it?
It's not money-based, it's device-based.
Thanks for participation and comment.